This series is already looking very different from what most people expected. A lot of fans were treating the Western Conference Finals like the real NBA Finals, with the belief that whoever came out of the West was basically guaranteed to win the championship. But it doesn't feel nearly that straightforward anymore. Oklahoma City would have been a brutal matchup for the New York Knicks. Their pace, relentless ball pressure, defensive depth, and ability to speed teams up on offense would have created all kinds of problems for New York. But San Antonio is built differently, and the Knicks actually have some real answers for what the Spurs bring to the table. The numbers only make this matchup more interesting. New York enters the finals riding an incredible 11-game playoff winning streak while ranking first in offensive rating, first in defensive rating, and posting an outrageous plus 20.9 net rating. That's complete domination. At the same time, the Spurs have Victor Wembanyama, and his impact has been massive. With Wemby on the floor this postseason, San Antonio owns a plus 17-point differential and an elite 101.1 defensive rating. That's the kind of defense that can completely shut a game down. So this isn't some simple story where the Western Conference was stronger and the Spurs are supposed to cruise to a title. Far from it. This matchup has all the ingredients for an absolute war. There are 5 major battlegrounds that could decide who lifts the trophy, and the final one might be the biggest of them all. New York brings something to the table that Oklahoma City simply didn't have, and if it works, San Antonio may have to rethink parts of its entire defensive strategy. The first major battle starts with one question: can San Antonio slow down Jalen Brunson? This is another area where the Knicks look completely different from the Thunder. Against OKC, the Spurs focused heavily on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They packed the paint, threw extra defenders his way, and challenged Oklahoma City's supporting cast to beat them from the outside. Even though SGA still looked like one of the most dangerous players on the floor in Game 7, he never fully reached his usual level throughout the series. Brunson presents a different challenge altogether. He may not be quite the same caliber of player as SGA overall, but he is a far more dangerous three-point shooter. Play drop coverage and he'll rise up for the jumper. Go under the screen and he'll fire away. Give him even a little room and he'll make defenses pay immediately. Coming off high screens, Brunson is pulling up with complete confidence and knocking down shots at an impressive rate. That's what makes him so dangerous. And unlike Oklahoma City, New York surrounds him with shooters who are comfortable letting it fly. The Knicks are shooting 40% from 3 as a team during these playoffs, which is a huge weapon. Brunson can shoot. Mikal Bridges can shoot. OG Anunoby has been money from deep. Karl Anthony Towns stretches the floor like few big men ever have. Even Josh Hart can get hot when defenses leave him alone. That gives New York a starting lineup where every player can threaten from beyond the arc, making it much harder for defenses to overload on Brunson. The matchup options don't exactly give San Antonio a lot of comfort either. De'Aaron Fox has struggled to contain Brunson in recent meetings. Across 18 field goal attempts defended by Fox over the last 3 seasons, Brunson has produced 1.17 points per shot while posting 58.3% true shooting. Those are strong numbers. Julian Champagnie hasn't had much success either. Against him, Brunson has generated 1.28 points per shot across 18 attempts while shooting an impressive 64% effective field goal percentage. That's a tough stat line to ignore. When it comes to Steph Castle and Devin Vassell, the data sample is still too small to draw firm conclusions. But watching the games, Castle looks like San Antonio's best bet. He has the size, strength, length, and physical style needed to at least make Brunson work for everything. After taking on the MVP in the previous round, there's a strong chance Castle gets the primary assignment again. Dylan Harper and Devin Vassell could also see plenty of opportunities guarding Brunson as the Spurs search for the right formula. Even if Steph Castle ends up doing the best defensive job possible, Jalen Brunson is still going to create some seriously uncomfortable situations for San Antonio. Give him even a sliver of daylight coming off a screen and he's launching without hesitation. Chase him off the three-point line and he'll punish teams from the mid-range. Start sending extra defenders his way and suddenly he's making the next pass to a teammate who can knock down shots from deep. That's what makes this matchup so tricky. The Spurs just got through a series against one of the league's top guards by packing the paint, crowding driving lanes, and forcing the ball into the hands of less dangerous shooters. That strategy worked there, but against Brunson and this Knicks roster, it's a completely different challenge. New York has too many players who can make defenses pay when left open. But the second battleground flips the conversation around. Brunson can absolutely create problems for San Antonio on offense, yet he could also become a target when New York is defending. The big question is simple: where does Brunson guard? There's virtually no chance New York wants him matched up against De'Aaron Fox for long stretches. Steph Castle presents an even tougher physical challenge, and if Dylan Harper comes off the bench and starts attacking downhill, that's not exactly a comfortable matchup either. Devin Vassell might seem like an option, but even that comes with concerns. Vassell's size allows him to shoot comfortably over smaller defenders, whether he's working from three-point range or the mid-range area. Of course, nobody is putting Brunson on Victor Wembanyama, so that leaves Julian Champagnie as the most logical assignment. That's actually what New York did during their regular season meeting on March 1st. On paper, it makes sense because Champagnie isn't usually the centerpiece of San Antonio's offense or the player initiating most of their actions. Still, that doesn't mean he's harmless. During the Oklahoma City series, Champagnie had several impactful moments. He attacked aggressively, made strong plays around the basket, and showed he can capitalize when defenses overlook him. He's not the type of player defenses can completely ignore. The real concern isn't turning Champagnie into some featured scorer. The concern is how the Spurs can use him within their offensive system. He's a capable screener, and that creates opportunities to drag Brunson into action after action. If San Antonio keeps involving Champagnie in screens, they can force difficult decisions and potentially create switches involving Brunson and their bigger, stronger guards. So how does New York handle that? Simply giving up every switch doesn't seem like a realistic solution. Throughout these playoffs, the Knicks have often sent extra help toward the level of the screen whenever opponents try to pull Brunson into unfavorable matchups. That's been one of their main ways of protecting him defensively. And this is where San Antonio's ball movement becomes critical. The Spurs don't need to score on every possession, but if New York starts overhelping to shield Brunson, the Spurs must consistently make the correct reads. Quick passes, smart decisions, and attacking defensive rotations could become one of the biggest keys in the entire series. That's really the heart of this battleground. It isn't just about who Brunson guards when the game starts. The bigger question is whether San Antonio can repeatedly involve him in actions and force New York's defense to bend over the course of a full game. If they can, it could create openings all over the floor. The third battleground centers around San Antonio's physical advantage and whether their guards can continue playing that aggressive, power-driven style. Against Oklahoma City, there were stretches where the Spurs simply looked bigger, stronger, and more forceful. Steph Castle and Dylan Harper were able to drive through contact, move defenders off their spots, get into the paint, and create offense through pure physicality. They often had size advantages against opposing guards, and that edge became a major weapon throughout the series. New York presents a completely different challenge than Oklahoma City ever did. The Knicks bring size, strength, and versatility all over the floor. Players like OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, and Mikal Bridges give them long physical defenders who can switch assignments and make life difficult. Bridges may not be the strongest player on the court, but his length alone creates problems. This isn't a series where Steph Castle and Dylan Harper can simply hunt smaller guards and overpower them possession after possession. That makes Castle one of the biggest swing factors in the entire matchup. Against Oklahoma City, he wasn't nearly as effective as he had been earlier in the playoffs. His three-point shooting dropped dramatically after catching fire in previous rounds, and the turnovers became a major concern. Those struggles allowed the Thunder to crowd driving lanes and challenge him to beat them from the outside. The Knicks could take a similar approach. If New York feels comfortable sagging off Castle, loading up on his drives, and daring him to shoot, it could put real pressure on San Antonio's spacing. That's exactly the kind of defensive gamble teams make when they're trying to slow down an offense built around a superstar big man like Victor Wembanyama. But if Castle responds and plays at a higher level, everything changes. He doesn't need to score 30 points or completely take over games. He simply has to be effective enough that New York respects him as a scoring threat. If defenders start closing out harder and bigger wings are forced to help when he attacks, the entire Spurs offense opens up in a much bigger way. Dylan Harper is another player who could have a huge impact off the bench. His ability to attack downhill, absorb contact, and create offense gives San Antonio another weapon when the starters sit. De'Aaron Fox will also play a massive role. Beyond the scoring, Fox brings experience, pace, and the ability to calm things down when possessions start getting chaotic. His timely shot-making could become extremely valuable in close games. At the end of the day, the Spurs can't rely on a strategy of give it to Wembanyama and hope for the best. That isn't enough against a team as talented as New York. Their guards must contribute, create offense, and successfully handle a completely different set of defensive matchups than the ones they faced against Oklahoma City. If they do that, San Antonio becomes far more dangerous. The fourth battleground comes down to all the little things that often decide championship series. We're talking about bench production, recovery, rebounding, free throws, hustle plays, and those ugly stretches where neither team is playing its best basketball. Those moments can quietly swing an entire series. The Knicks enter this matchup with a major advantage in one area: rest. They've had more than a week to recover, study film, and prepare. Meanwhile, San Antonio is coming off a grueling battle. Fox has been dealing with a sprained ankle, and it's safe to assume Wembanyama has picked up plenty of bumps and bruises after such a physical postseason run. The good news for the Spurs is that the final schedule includes longer breaks between games, which should help them recover and stay fresh. Still, extra rest isn't always a guaranteed advantage. New York experienced that firsthand in the Cleveland series when they looked rusty early and struggled to find their rhythm. If that happens again here, they may not get a second chance. San Antonio is simply too good to spot a team a huge lead and expect them to climb back into the game later. That's why this conversation feels less like rest versus fatigue and more like rest versus rhythm. The Spurs are coming in battle-tested and sharp, while New York must quickly rediscover its game speed. With multiple days off built into the schedule, the situation may not be as one-sided as it appears at first glance. The bench battle could be huge as well, and this is one area where San Antonio has reasons to feel confident. Dylan Harper has been one of the biggest sparks for the second unit. He showed tremendous confidence in the previous series, delivered big shots under pressure, and looked completely unfazed by the moment. His impact has gone far beyond what many expected. Keldon Johnson is another player worth watching closely. His postseason production hasn't always been consistent, but this matchup could give him opportunities to attack favorable situations. New York's bench groups can sometimes give up size advantages, and that creates chances for San Antonio to hunt mismatches. If Johnson can force switches and attack defenders one-on-one, he could become an important X-factor in some of the smaller lineups the Knicks put on the floor. From New York's Takatan, Mitchell Robinson could end up being one of the biggest hidden factors in this entire series. Few players can change a game with offensive rebounding the way he can. One stretch of dominant work on the glass can completely flip momentum, create extra possessions, and put enormous pressure on a defense. Every missed shot becomes another opportunity when Robinson is crashing the boards. Of course, free throws will also be something to watch closely. Opponents have often been willing to test Robinson at the line, and it wouldn't be surprising if Spurs coach Mitch Johnson looks for ways to exploit that weakness at key moments. When games get tight, every possession matters, and those little details can suddenly become huge. That's why this battle isn't just about stars. It's about bench production, second chance points, free throws, hustle plays, and whether San Antonio can stay competitive during the minutes when Victor Wembanyama is off the floor. Those hidden areas could end up deciding multiple games in this series. But the fifth battleground is easily the most important one of all. Can the Knicks pull Victor Wembanyama away from the paint? Because if Wembanyama gets to camp near the rim defensively for the entire series, New York could have a major problem on its hands. He is the centerpiece of San Antonio's defense. His presence alone changes how opponents attack. Players can beat their defender on the perimeter, get all the way to the basket, and still have to deal with a towering shot blocker waiting at the rim. That's what makes the Spurs so difficult to score against. New York's biggest counter to that problem is Karl Anthony Towns, and that's exactly why he may be the most important player in this matchup. Unlike some previous opponents, the Knicks have a center who can force Wembanyama into uncomfortable decisions. Towns isn't just a talented scorer. He's bigger, stronger, an excellent rebounder, and one of the greatest shooting big men the league has ever seen. That shooting changes everything. If Towns is consistently spacing the floor several feet beyond the three-point line, Wembanyama may be forced to leave his comfort zone and defend much farther from the basket. Suddenly, driving lanes open up. Help defense changes. Rotations become harder. The entire structure of San Antonio's defense starts looking different. That's something Oklahoma City struggled to do consistently. The Knicks have a weapon capable of creating a completely different challenge for the Spurs, and Towns' ability to stretch the floor could become one of the defining storylines of the finals. But while New York is trying to solve the Wembanyama problem on one end, they also have to figure out how to defend him on the other end. That's where things get complicated. Towns has the size and strength to battle physically. In theory, he can absorb contact, fight for position, compete on the boards, and make life difficult around the basket. The concept makes sense. However, the historical numbers suggest the matchup hasn't completely slowed Wembanyama down. Across previous meetings, Wembanyama has still found ways to score efficiently against him. Even so, the bigger concern for New York may not be whether Towns can survive defensively. The bigger concern is foul trouble. Towns is simply too valuable offensively to risk spending long stretches on the bench. His floor spacing, scoring, and ability to pull defenders away from the rim are absolutely critical to New York's game plan. If he starts picking up unnecessary fouls while battling Wembanyama, that could create serious problems for the Knicks. Mitchell Robinson provides another option, but he hasn't completely solved the puzzle either. Wembanyama has still managed to produce solid numbers when matched up against him. Robinson's size and strength help, but stopping a player with Wembanyama's combination of length, mobility, and skill is never easy. That's why OG Anunoby could become one of the most fascinating adjustments in the entire series. While the sample size isn't massive, previous matchups have shown some encouraging signs for New York when OG is involved. The logic behind it is easy to understand. Anunoby has the strength to hold his ground, the quickness to stay in front on drives, and the length to challenge shots. Few players in the league combine those traits as effectively as he does. OG may not completely shut Wembanyama down, but he might be the Knicks' most versatile option. He can contest without giving up easy position, fight through physical play, and potentially disrupt the rhythm that makes Wembanyama so dangerous. If New York finds success in this matchup, it could become one of the biggest strategic adjustments of the series. But the other side of this battle is just as important. If the Spurs don't want Wembanyama chasing Towns around the perimeter all game, then somebody else has to take that assignment. That's where San Antonio faces a major question. Most of their starting lineup lacks the ideal combination of size and strength needed for that challenge. The most likely answer appears to be Julian Champagnie, but if Towns starts finding favorable matchups, the Spurs could be forced into some difficult defensive decisions very quickly. If Julian Champagnie ends up guarding Karl Anthony Towns, then New York has to attack that matchup immediately. There is no reason for Cat to be standing in the corner or drifting through possessions in that situation. The Knicks need to get him touches, force the issue, and make San Antonio prove it can handle that matchup. Every opportunity should be tested because that's a potential pressure point in the Spurs' defense. The reason this becomes so important is because San Antonio's likely priority is keeping Victor Wembanyama in his favorite defensive role. They want him acting like a free safety, floating around the paint, reading the action, protecting the rim, and erasing mistakes. That's when he's at his most dangerous. And if that means helping off Josh Hart, the Spurs will probably be perfectly comfortable doing it. As long as Wembanyama can stay near the basket, San Antonio gains a massive defensive advantage. Brunson's driving lanes become crowded. Towns sees extra defenders. Cutters lose space. Suddenly, everything becomes harder for New York's offense. The challenge for the Knicks is that making a couple of threes may not be enough to force a defensive adjustment. San Antonio could easily look at that and say, fine, we'll live with it. Their priority is protecting the paint and disrupting the stars. If Hart hits a few outside shots while Wembanyama continues controlling the lane, the Spurs may still view that as a favorable trade-off. That's why timing matters just as much as percentage. The real question isn't simply whether Hart makes open threes, it's whether he makes enough of them. Whether he makes them consistently, and whether he knocks them down during critical moments that force San Antonio to rethink the game plan. Because if the Spurs ever feel compelled to move Wembanyama back onto Towns, everything changes. Now, Wembanyama has to defend farther from the basket. If he backs off too much, Towns gets clean looks from three. If he closes aggressively, Towns can use his passing ability to trigger the offense, find cutters, and create easy opportunities for teammates. That's where New York becomes extremely dangerous. Some of the Knicks' best offensive stretches during these playoffs have come when Towns operates from the top of the floor, drawing opposing big men away from the rim and creating space for everyone else. Once that paint opens up, the entire offense starts flowing, driving lanes appear, backdoor cuts become available, rotations become more difficult. Everything starts working together. That's why San Antonio will likely continue betting on Hart's outside shooting for as long as possible. From their perspective, it's a much safer gamble than giving Brunson extra room to operate or allowing Towns to get comfortable from deep. The high. Spurs would rather challenge a lower volume perimeter shooter than give stars easier opportunities. And the playoff numbers support that approach. Outside of a handful of strong shooting performances earlier in the postseason, Hart has been around the 30% range from three-point territory. Looking at those percentages, it's easy to understand why San Antonio might be willing to keep making that bet. In fact, Hart may need an explosive shooting night before the Spurs seriously consider changing anything. It could take 4, 5, or even more made threes in a game before San Antonio starts feeling uncomfortable. Until then, they'll probably stick with the strategy that keeps their defensive anchor near the basket. It's similar to situations we've seen before where defenses intentionally live with a role player taking open shots because the alternative is allowing the opposing stars to take over. Even when those role players have occasional hot nights, teams sometimes stay committed because the larger defensive trade-off still works in their favor. At its core, this entire finals matchup may come down to one giant chess match. Where is Wembanyama positioned, and can New York force him somewhere he doesn't want to be? For the Knicks, the mission is clear. Pull him away from the rim, stretch the defense, and create space for everyone else. For the Spurs, the goal is just as simple. Keep arguably the most impactful rim protector in basketball stationed near the paint, where he can disrupt everything New York wants to do. And now comes the toughest part, making a prediction. This series is incredibly difficult to call because both teams have compelling arguments in their favor. New York has looked dominant throughout the postseason and has put up outstanding numbers on both ends of the floor. They deserve all the credit they've earned. At the same time, San Antonio comes into this matchup battle-tested. They survived an intense 7-game series against the defending champions and looked stronger as that matchup progressed. That's the kind of experience that can matter in the finals. Some people will point to New York's playoff path and argue that their numbers may be a bit inflated because of the opponents they faced. That's a fair discussion, but it doesn't take away from how impressive the Knicks have been. This is still an elite basketball team capable of winning the championship. And if New York finds a reliable way to pull Wembanyama away from the basket, they absolutely have a real chance to win this series. But if San Antonio succeeds in keeping him near the rim, if Josh Hart can't consistently punish the extra space he's given, if the Spurs can repeatedly target favorable matchups involving Brunson, and if key bench contributors like Dylan Harper and Keldon Johnson continue providing quality minutes, the balance starts tilting towards San Antonio. More than anything, though, the deciding factor for me is the defense. The Spurs have built one of the toughest defensive systems in basketball, and Wembanyama sits right at the center of it. That gives them an edge that is hard to ignore. I still expect New York to make this a fight. If the Knicks can steal a game early on the road, this series could become even more dramatic and potentially go the distance. Every game should feel intense, physical, and highly competitive. But if this matchup reaches a winner-take-all Game 7, I'm leaning toward the team with the superstar defensive anchor and the system that's been shutting opponents down throughout the postseason. My final prediction: San Antonio wins an absolute battle in 7 games and captures the championship.